here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the guitarist and songwriter Bruce Watson, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all the other groovy stuff. One of the founding members of Big Country, alongside the singer and guitarist Stuart Adamson, and has had a life in music, also playing guitar with the Skids at various times in his career, but has got a new project out which is called Big Country Redux, which has got a new album, Eastworld, that is coming out on the 19th of September 2026, which is a lot of songs that have been demoed in the early years, mostly the 80s, and have been re-recorded by his new band. And if that isn't exciting enough, he has also got a tour of this project as well that's going to be happening in the autumn. I will put a link in the notes below. Anyway, this is the interview. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Bruce, it's over to you.
Well, I was born in 61, and I kind of remember, I just remember all the sounds from, the 60s, all the early Beatles stuff and the Stones. I remember, even though I was just a very small child, the radio was always on in the house, like probably most people at that age. Television was still, at that time you still had to rent a television, if you were lucky enough to rent one, with your 2 channels or 3 channels, blah, blah, blah. And probably similar to yourself, started seriously getting into music probably early 70s with Top of the Pops being on, and you kind of, you'd see things like Mark Bolan and T-Rex and David Bowie, Slade, Sweet, blah, blah, blah. And then getting into stuff that was maybe a wee bit heavier. I remember going into the local record shop and not hearing but seeing this, these wonderful Hypnosis-style sleeves, Roger Dean sleeves,
Yes.
And a lot of prog rock stuff. And there was one that stuck out to me, was a Sensational Alex Harvey band, and I didn't even know that they were a Scottish band, but the sleeves were just amazing. And I think I went to the lady in the shop. I don't remember at that time. They had those little listening booths that were like like a private little telephone box with the headphones, and you could go and try before you buy. And I remember asking if they could let me hear about the next album, Alex Harvey Band, and took it to the booth and completely, what the hell is this? This is amazing. And probably not having enough money at the time to buy the album, because I think albums were probably about, I don't know, 3 or 4 quid at the time, and a single was about 50 pence at the time or whatever. And it was like, with your pocket money, you'd either save your money up for a good couple of weeks before you could get the album, or just buy a single a week kind of thing. So I think I had saved up my pocket money for that one album.
Yes.
And then learning they were Scottish, but I didn't even think they were Scottish, but that was kind of wow. And then obviously the punk thing as well, the 76 period when I was just, leaving school and starting a job, and you had that mental summer that was just crazy, that was with the heat, and the punk thing sort of happened as well, and got into, the Clash and the Damned and, Doctor the Madness and stuff like that. So yeah. I've always liked music. I've never just stuck to the one kind of music. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, then I just, I'll let that one go by me. But yeah,
Yes.
I've just always loved music.
Did you have any older brothers or sisters that gave you some musical, like direction or any?
No, not at all. I've got a younger brother and a younger sister.
Right, so you were the eldest. Because my older brother, who was 7 years older, he was into prog rock. So those Roger Dean, yes, album sleeves were
I do love the sleeves. The sleeves are great. I couldn't get into a lot of that music at the time, but later on I did. In fact, Storm Thorgerson, who was one half of Hypnosis, that did all Houses of the Holy, Led Zeppelin and stuff, worked for him a couple of times. He directed a couple of our videos, and it was just amazing. Storm, he was a real true.
Was he the member who was in of that trio? Was he Throbbing Gristle? Was he the Throbbing Gristle person, Storm?
No, Storm.
Actually, it was Chris. There was three, wasn't there? There's a guy called Aubrey. There was Storm, and then there was Chris, who was the Throbbing.
Right, I'd never met Aubrey. Was it Aubrey Poe? I'm not sure. Storm. We did three. I think we did 3 or 4 videos, promotional videos with Storm, and we went out to Moscow and did this documentary. He actually made the documentary for us as well, but he was like like I say, a real English eccentric, just completely mad, bonkers. It kind of reminded me a little bit, Tom Baker's Doctor Who character, a bit like that.
Yes.
He was great.
Yeah, so there was Storm, Aubrey's Power, which I've done a few interviews with, and then the other guy was Peter, who was is it Christopher? He was in Throbbing Gristle.
Right. Well, just Storm that I knew,
Yeah, so they had all those magical covers from the 70s and then the other decades as well. But yeah, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Peter Gabriel, yes, and all those guys.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, God, the progress. So I was quite intrigued by listening to some of these records as I sneaked into my brother's bedroom to listen to them when he wasn't about, to sort of wonder what the hell they were, because on top, obviously, there was like Top of the Pops and the top 20 that you'd hear on a Sunday with great enthusiasm. So this other music from Yes and Genesis were just
that was like the sort of the secret that music, wasn't it? Whereas your Slade and Sweet were your instant stuff, because you'd see them every Thursday night on Top of the Pops. And there was all those other things as well that were just amazing things, like Sparks, This Town Ain't Big Enough, which was it Glamour? It's just a label, you're Lou Reed, The Transformer, Walk on the Wild Side. What the hell was that all about, like I say, Sparks. There was all these other things, apart from, Slade and Sweet, which were great records, But all this mad bonker stuff and, Roxy Music. I mean, when you start buying those Roxy Music albums and the Sparks records, it's not just that instant glam kind of thing. There's a depth there as well, which at the time I probably didn't understand, but they were very adult, weren't they?
Yes.
But those Roxy albums,
Well, yes, they were good. Oh, actually, Sparks always felt so European, so I was a bit surprised a bit later on that they weren't.
Yeah, something like that. It was nuts.
It was very good. But you were a bit older than me, so you would have probably picked up on punk a bit. I didn't pick up on punk at all. I felt a bit too young. So you would have got What was the first gig you went to then?
I'd been to a few sort of gigs that were just like local bands that were playing, top 20 hits at the local ballroom. Can't even remember their names now, but they were just covers bands kind of thing. And the first band I stood in front of, but it was in a rehearsal situation, was the Skids. And this was even before they had a record deal. This was when they were still at the rehearsal stage.
Right.
My friend that I used to work beside was also a roadie for the Skids, and I was 16 at the time, or maybe 17, 18. He took me up to this just warehouse where the Skids were rehearsing, and completely blew me away. I was watching Stuart Adamson, who had this, 70s Gibson Marauder guitar and H&H amplifier that lit up. And just the clothes that all the guys were wearing, but standing in front of Stuart with the loudest thing I'd ever heard, his guitar, an amplifier, which just blew me away. But I'd say the first band that really said something to me was when The Clash played at the Kinema Ballroom, with the Skids supported as well. And that was just amazing, watching the Clash. And they played the Kinema Ballroom again. and I've seen the Clash a few times, but so I would say the Clash is probably the first band, of any substance, that is just completely wow. This is for me.
Yes, I would imagine that was quite some. So then at 16, you left school, and was this because I think it was Muriel Gray on the Tube that mentioned that you sort of went and worked cleaning nuclear submarines, and one day your
Oh,
wellies.
that was just a fun story. No, I mean, when I left school, I actually left school at 15. I started, got this job selling lemonade, which a lot of the guys from my era did at that time. It was just a quick stopgap in this, like a summer holiday job, really. So you went out selling lemonade, and the money was okay, and I managed to, my aim was to get money to buy a guitar and an amplifier, blah blah blah. So I did that over the summer holiday period. That, like I say, that real long hot summer that was nasty for Scottish people because we don't like the heat, or rather the heat
Yes.
like us. And then I got this. When I turned 16, I managed to get a job. There was kind of a couple of options in Dunfermline. You could either go down the pit, the mine, or go down the dockyard, which was big, and join the army. Too scared. Or work in a shoe shop. But so anyway, I took the option of working down the dockyard, which most people in my area did anyway. And again, it was mainly to just buy. I wanted money for guitars and stuff like that.
Yes.
And yeah, so I ended up on working on I wasn't cleaning. I was working on nuclear submarines. I used to pretend to people, what that must be really exciting. What did you do? I used to kickstart them, But so that was my job. I used to work in the submarines, So
Yes. And when you got your first guitar, did that sort of come? Did you sort of pick it up quite easily at that stage?
no, 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 no. I think my first guitar, my parents would have got me back, and it would just been one of those cheap and nasty acoustic things, with the strings that were about an inch above the fingerboard that cut your fingers to ribbons, which I think is a story for most people that wanted to learn how to play guitar, kind of thing. Their parents get them the cheapest, crappiest, nastiest guitar that you could find. And we had a local record shop up here called Sandy Muir's, and they sold records as well as musical equipment. So you get a couple of guitars in the window and accordions and things like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Kazoos.
So
um,
were you in various sort of local bands at that stage?
just in the one band, and at that time, like I say, it was a punk thing, and so you were kind of encouraged to do your own songs. You didn't have to actually do cover versions of the day like what the other bands that I'd seen previously, like at the ballroom and stuff like that. You didn't have to do your covers of the top 20. You could just make up, just do anything, and that's kind of what I got into doing, with some of my friends. And in the dockyard, there was maybe about, I don't know, 10 different groups down there, of varying genres of music. There'd be like a couple of heavy rock bands, a couple of prog bands, and then when the punk thing was coming through, a couple of younger bands like the ones I was in, And I used to look up to a lot of these guys, and everybody was quite friendly, and we would all meet up in the dockyard canteen and, talk about putting on gigs together and stuff like that, and, kind of borrow your PA and all that kind of stuff. So
Yes.
it was always quite healthy, the music scene up in Dunfermline. Plus, we had Nazareth, who were from Dunfermline as well.
Oh, yes, that's right. Was Status Quo a big band in the area at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, everybody loved Status Quo. I mean, the bands that if you were into sort of on the heavier side of things, Status Quo, Thin Lizzy were the sort of the Alex Harvey band as well. They were the main bands. If you were into the sort of heavier side of things, you'd always see someone at the school, with a Lizzy album or a Co album.
Yes. So you were the Delinquents were supporting the Skids in the early days, were they? So that's where you came on the radar.
Yeah, that was the name of my first sort of outfit, the Delinquents, you know, which we probably thought was cool, but wasn't. We were Delinquents. It was just, and then I found out years later that Mick Jones for the Clash's first band was called the Delinquents as well, which was quite funny. But yeah, so um, you know, after getting to know Stuart and the other guys in the Skids, every time they kind of played locally, my band would be the support band for them, you know. So
Yes, because that was a weird, that was obviously a bit of a strange period because in the late 70s, 79, Thatcher gets in, then we have the Falkland War, there's the miners' crisis, there's Green
yeah,
Common. So what was that kind of, I mean, I know you were very young at the time, but did that kind of have quite an impact, especially the Falkland War sort of?
yeah. Well, the Falkland War was, I mean that was going on. I mean, our second album, Steeltown, has songs that kind of dealt with the Falkland War as well, you know. And uh, Stuart and I, whenever we went to, because we're in Dunfermline, we used to get the train down to London every weekend to go down there to work, to record or rehearse or whatever we were doing. So we were on the train, and it's exactly 400 miles kind of thing from the Edinburgh down to London on the train, and which is why we used that line 400 miles in Field to Fire. And it was interesting because at that time we'd always end up in a carriage that was full of squaddies,
Right.
Scottish squaddies that were, you know, on that train probably to go down to Southampton at some point to go over to the Falklands, you know. So, and we used to sit in the carriage with them and have a drink and play cards with them, and it was, you know, and it was, you know, some of them were older than us, but a lot of them were the same age as us, you know, and they were going off to fight in this place in the South Atlantic. It's like, you know, even a lot of them didn't know, you know, where the Falklands are. I think a lot of people thought the Falkland Islands was away up, you know, past Scotland, Scotland and stuff. Like,
Yes,
but,
I think we all sort of had to do our bit.
yeah, what's this all about, you know? But that album, uh, Steeltown, which kind of dealt with that Thatcher period and the Falklands and stuff, you know, which was it was a bloody horrible time, you know, and it was weird for me for the band because, you know, it was our second album and we were having a bit of success. And then you come home and like my father was a miner, and you know you come home and the miner strike's going on, and it's like we're having a bit of success, and then there's all this strike going on and a struggle and the Falklands, and it was like a double edged sword. It was just, you know, it was, you know, kind of felt good that we were having a bit of success. It's what I always wanted, kind of thing, and at the same time, you know, the people that live across the street or next door to you are like struggling to put food on the table because of, you know, what's been going on and stuff. You know, the strike, it affected everybody. It was horrible.
Yes, it was quite grim. And I also think, having done this show for quite a long time now, I mean, I think the reason there were so many bands, especially indie bands from that decade, was there was such a lot of high unemployment, and there was, the social security system was quite, in a way, quite good. So people could just sign on, do, that line or job seekers allowance, enterprise allowance schemes, and give them the access just to play music for a bit. Which I think that's why there was a lot of
Yeah,
creativity.
I think things like that are okay when you've just left school and you're single and you're on your own. But if you've got just been recently married and you've got children and you've got people that you're responsible for, it's not a system that you'd want to get involved with. You know, people, you know, want to work, you know, but without being but and then again, you don't want to be a scab either. So, but you
Oh
know,
God, yes, it's a
it's just a horrific thing, you know, to be one minute you're kind of happy and you're working away and you're bringing in money to support your family, and the next minute, you know, due to circumstances beyond your control, you're not allowed to work now and blah blah blah. But
yes. So when you got the four piece came together with Tony and Mark, Was there an instant sort of rapport between the sort of the band? Did you
Yeah,
sort of think?
there was actually. There was. Um, I mean, the sort of history with Stuart and myself, we put the band together with um, friends up here in Dunfermline, and we did this kind of tour with Alice Cooper that was kind of disastrous for us. It didn't work out, and we had a label that were interested in us, and the guys at the label would say, "Look, there's potential here, but it's not quite working out with the rhythm section." And I mean, I liked it. I thought it was good, but probably due to inexperience. But we were kind of one of those rhythm sections with the bass player and the drummer who were brilliant, but it was almost like they weren't sympathetic to each other. They were both again wandering off in their own little tangents and stuff like that, and it sounded interesting, but I suppose not commercial. So the label had said, "Look, after this sort of disastrous Alice Cooper tour, change the bass player and the drummers," which happened.
Right.
And we got Tony and Mark in, and Stuart and I had to go down to London. Stuart had known them previously because they were in a band called On the Air with Simon Townsend, Pete's brother, who supported the Skids on that last tour that they did. So Stuart kind of knew them anyway. But we went down, and Stuart and I had been recording these demos on a cassette 4-track recorder. So Stuart had sent them the songs down. Tony and Mark had learnt the songs, 3 songs. We went into Phonogram Studios, and it was the first time that I'd met everybody. And it was kind of instant. It was, there was like it's a cliche. There was a certain chemistry there, and we recorded these 3 songs. And Chris Briggs, A&R guy at Phonogram, said, "Yeah, this is definitely a band. This works. I'd like you to do a couple of more songs," which we did do a period later, and that signed the deal. He goes, "No, this is definitely a group. This is going to work," and. That was great. With Tony and Mark, it was one of those instant kind of things, It was just we got on. The only thing that was difficult was the language barrier. The Scottish, the thick sort of Fife accent that I had at the time.
Yes, well, because actually that first album which came out, which was kind of it just had so many. It was such a perfect debut album because it had 4 singles on it. I mean, every one kind of quite anthemic, wasn't it? And very instantly kind of like memorable. At that stage, I had to confess, because I loved that album. I thought, God, this band's going to be bigger than you too at this stage. I was so committed to Big Country.
Oh, wow, thank you.
It was just amazing. Every song was just brilliant. So, yes, there must have been a fantastic atmosphere in the studio, having such incredible material.
And that was great. And we had, because half of the album had been kind of written with Stuart and myself on that Porta Studio thing, little tape recorder. And we had actually recorded probably half the album with Chris Thomas at Air Studios at the time. But at that, and Chris Thomas also produced the first single, Harvest Home. So we kind of got halfway through the album, but it was taking a long time. We were doing it down at Air Studios, which meant, again, Stuart and myself having to get the train down to London, once every 2 weeks kind of thing. We could only work a couple of days with Chris because he was flying out to Montserrat to work on Elton John's album at the same time kind of thing.
Right.
And, but it was just taking a bit longer than what because of his schedule. And so the label, Chris Briggs at label, said, "Look, it's kind of not working out." And we'd got halfway through the album, and we'd always loved Steve Lillywhite's production, but we could never get him. But a window had kind of came up in the schedule, and he had 2 days, and we at that time we were doing more demos, and we had this song called Fields of Fire, and Steve thought that could be a single, Fields of Fire. So we went into Rack Studios for 2 days to record Fields of Fire, and the rest is kind of history, So that became our first hit, and then we were luckily enough that another window became available for Steve, and I think it was thanks to you too that they had to pull out some sort of recording or whatever with Steve. They had to postpone it, so Steve became available for 6 weeks. And so it was right. That's perfect. Let's get this album done. And it was good because we'd been playing most of the songs anyway live, and most of them had been written and recorded beforehand. But obviously, we didn't use those recordings. We recorded them from scratch with Steve. So that's kind of how that came about. Thank God,
Yes, God, Steve Lillywhite. I think did he work with the Smiths or Morrissey? Anyway, he worked with most
Oh
people.
no, he didn't do the Smiths. He might have done Morrissey later, but he didn't do the Smiths. No.
No.
At the time, he was doing obviously U2. He did Simple Minds as well, or the Peter Gabriel stuff. XTC was the one that was the kind of had that sound, and the Peter Gabriel thing as well, with that that big drum sound thing.
Yes, actually, did you find, because the 80s, for people who were, actually, I was thinking of Stephen Street, sorry about that. That was the Smiths.
Oh, yeah, got you.
Yes, because the 80s was quite a tricky decade for some artists. And I always felt that the artists who had done brilliant stuff in the 70s kind of struggled a bit in the 80s, kind of because there's that Trevor Horn production, the gated reverb, and it was like, blimey.
Yeah.
Whereas the indie bands that, John Peel, say, played, they didn't have that sort of technology and they still sounded pretty, like earthy. Were you sitting in sort of vaguely both camps at that stage, kind of thinking, we're not really an indie band like, all those ones that we heard in John Peel, but, but there was that production sound that became like the Trevor Horn production of ABC.
I don't know, but we didn't set out to be anything. We just set out to be ourselves. But yeah, I think because the production side of things, I guess we'd all been interested in that side of things as well. It wasn't just a matter of let's go in. Although we did do some recordings where you just go and you play it live, and you do maybe about 3 or 4 takes, and you edit them together to get the best sort of drum track. Steve's way of working with Mark was quite ingenious. There's only certain drummers can do this, where you play the drum kit, but you break it down so you're not actually playing all the instruments at the same time. Whereas he would get Mark just to play the kick drum and the snare drum in one take, then get him to add the hi-hats, get him to add the tom-toms, get him to add the cymbals, so he had complete separation. And at the time, that's quite a hard thing to do. Nowadays, it's, and you've got the computers and stuff like that, and the software that you've got, you can do that.
Yes.
But
it's quite weird.
At the time, it's quite a difficult thing to do. Mark, there's only a few drummers that could do that kind of thing, Mark, Simon Phillips, another one, a few other players as well. But we were quite an organic band. We were predominantly a live band. And in the studio, we just, we learned a lot from Steve Lillywhite and Robin Miller.
Yeah. Oh God, Robin. He of Sade
and Chris Thomas as well, because just the different production techniques, But things were changing at that point as well. You've got to remember everything was analog up until that period in the early 80s, when digital started happening, and SSL, automated mixing desks and stuff like that. So, and obviously it was in its infancy at the time. I didn't think a lot of the early digital stuff sounded great.
No.
But nowadays you get, things are getting remastered, and obviously technology is better. But at the time I thought digital was a bit... We had a lot of problems with digital stuff, I must admit, on our second album.
Yeah. But you did Wonderland. That was your sort of a standout single, wasn't it? At that stage?
Yeah, and that was analog. The first album was analog.
Right, and that was...
The crossing was analog, and Wonderland was analog as well. And they were all done at Rack Studios and the Manor Studios as well.
Right, God. That's a kind of an epic song. Did you, as a band, how did you work? Was it mostly Stuart, or did you sort of come together between you and Stuart mostly to sort of work
Wonderland was what I'd call a bolt-on song. It was like 2 separate ideas. The sort of funk bit, that was my idea, the funk thing at the start, and a couple of the chord changes, and Stuart had this other song. Well, see, they weren't songs; they were just two pieces of music that had nothing, no vocals or anything, that we kind of bolted together, and then just went into a room and jammed. We weren't big on jamming, but in this instance, it was like we kind of got together in a room and sort of thrashed it out, and we needed a new song anyway for the label. And it was right after we'd done the first album, and we hadn't written the second album yet. So it was kind of an in-between, like a transition sort of song. But it sounded like it could have been on the Crossing, I must admit, because it was still the same setup, the same studio, Steve, same engineer, Will Gosling. And it sounded like it could have came from those sessions, so there was a good continuity there.
Yes.
So yeah, and it was... It turned out to be a really a great song, and and it's one that we still play today. It's always been in the set.
It is a crowd favourite, isn't it? It's just, I mean, lyrically as well as music and sonically, it's just amazing. It's an amazing song. So with all these, when you're in a role, I mean, I found doing this show, most bands have a 5-year narrative. They have the 12-month honeymoon period, the John Peel play, the John Peel session.
Exactly.
The first single, things are good. First album, things are good. Second album can be a bit tricky. Third, it's like quite tricky. What was it? Because the speed that you suddenly have to work, is that quite like a gear change? You're thinking, oh my God, we haven't stopped. Now we've got the second album due.
I don't know, because obviously Stuart kind of knew that, because he had 3 albums with the Skids that were kind of successful. But it's the same story for most bands. You've got all these songs that if you've written your own material that you've been playing for a long time, and that's your first album, and then if that becomes successful, you obviously have to tour it, like what happened with The Crossing. So you're on the road everywhere touring this album, and then that comes to an end, and you maybe get a couple of weeks break, whatever, and it's like, right, take a record your second album, and it's like, because you've signed a contract with the label, it's probably a 6, 7, 8 album deal that you've got to deliver or whatever. And then, right, album number 2, oh, really? Right. You got any ideas? No. We've been playing that, so it's that kind of thing. In our instance, we got together, Tony and Mark, Stuart and myself, we got together in a rehearsal room in Edinburgh, and just, right, who's got any ideas, anything, so that was the first time the 4 of us kind of, whereas the Crossing had been more Stuart and myself.
Yes.
The songs had been done, whereas with Steel Town it was like, you got any guitar riffs, you got any ideas, anything. So we spent a long time in a rehearsal situation in Edinburgh.
Yes.
4 of us just trying to come up with ideas, and that kind of became the second album, Steel Town. And at the time, Steve Lillywhite had a very good problem. He was earning far too much money because he was working with so many bands. He had to take time out. He had to work outside the UK for tax purposes. So we went over to Stockholm with Steve for a couple of months.
Studios.
We went to ABBA's studio, Pola.
Right. What was that like for the
again? It was great, but it was the first time we'd worked on digital. It was like the early sort of digital 3M tape machine, but always having problems with it. Was always sort of breaking down and getting spikes and clicks and stuff like that. But it was great. It was just a great experience, although a costly one. Because I don't know. I mean, if you've ever been to Stockholm, but I think it was the world's most expensive city at the time. So
yes, it's a bit.
But no, but it was great. We just hunkered in and worked, and we came out with Steel Town, and it's an album. We had 3 singles off it, which was great. And again, I think Steve Lillywhite has actually said this as well. It's the only album I would go back and have a look at again. The songs are great, but I sometimes feel that from a band's point of view, probably their own fault. There's too many overdubs, guitar overdubs. I sometimes feel that Stuart's lyrics get kind of buried because of the instrumentation. There's a lot of stuff going on in there, and sometimes I just like the songs to breathe a bit better,
Yes.
But this kind of leads on to the new album that I've just
Well,
done.
yes, the new album. Let's because
Eastworld. What
this
happened? This kind of just sorry to butt in. This kind of reminds me. What happened was at that period we'd released the Play of the Rose had been a single, East of Eden had been a single, and the label got in touch and they say like Just a Shadow. We agreed that should be the third single, and the label said, but we've got a problem. We don't have any music for the B-side. We've run out of live tracks. We've run out of all the extra tracks. Have all been used. 12-inch mixes, blah blah blah. So we need a new song to go on the B-side. So can you, Stuart, go into a studio and write and record a B-side? We need it done yesterday. So, and it was so tight that we couldn't even get Tony Mark up. There was no time to get Tony Mark up. So Stuart and I just went into a studio in Edinburgh with a drum machine kind of thing, and we wrote and recorded a song called Winter Sky. Sent it down to the label. The label went, brilliant, that's great. That'll be the B-side.
right.
But it was Stuart and Bruce and a drum machine. So Tony Mark went on it, and the song, it was a good song, Winter Sky, really good song. But it just felt as being, we never touched it, we never played it live kind of thing at the time, and it was a good song that we kind of forgot about. So my point is with the new album, Eastworld, there's a lot of songs that were like that were kind of unfinished, or mainly demos. And when you're demoing, it's just a couple of the guys in the band and a drum machine kind of thing, and it's a rough sketch.
Yes.
Sometimes they get used on an album, sometimes they don't, and they get forgotten about, and they get put away in a vault, whether it's a mental vault or a drawer.
So with this compilation, Eastworld, there's like 10 tracks. And it's just kind of fascinating. So when were these all recorded, by the way? Were these like during the 80s?
Yeah, they were all recorded during the 80s.
Because I played it a lot, this album, so I've really enjoyed it. But I have to say my favourite is "Kiss the Girl." I think that's just a classic.
Right. So all of the songs they go. Ian, my manager, Ian Grant, had a series of releases on Track Records, which he had called Rarities, and they were all big country demos. We all agreed that they should come out. The fans loved this. There was about 8 or 9 in the series, and the fans loved it because it was all basically demos, early versions of songs. So that's what I did. I kind of went into the vaults. So only diehard fans would know these songs. The general public probably just think they're new songs, but there was all songs that were in various states that needed to be completed. And in my head, I kind of felt like if Stuart, Tony, Mark, and myself had gone to a studio and had time to develop the songs and finish them, this is what I wanted to do with the new bands,
So you went into the vaults, found these recordings, and thought, with this project, I need to, and they're very kind of rough, I need to then fill them out, do some overdubs, and polish them up. Is that the case?
Well, I just wanted to develop them and take them to their final conclusion. Some of them had been released on albums as album tracks. There was a couple that had been released as album tracks, but I just felt like the demo version was better. A song called "The Hostage Speaks," for instance, which the demo was much better than the recorded version that we did for the No Place Like Home album. So there's a few songs like that.
And there's so the Troubled Man as a track. I'm having to remember this. Is this the one with the woman singing? Is this a female vocalist on this?
Yeah, we've got two female vocalists on that one. Yeah.
So who were they? Sorry,
they were in a group called Lorna and Belly Belly's from the East. They did this band called Pistol Daisies, which they still. I think Belly's away now. She's away back to Asia. But Lorna, the two of them are great vocalists, and they done a few shows with us. And what we were doing, we were doing the song "The Seer," which was a track on our third album, and Another Story with Kate Bush
Yes.
singing on that. And so I thought, well, the girls are out with us, let's do the Seer, you know, and they can do the Kate Bush parts, which they did brilliantly. So Troubled Man was a song that, again, it was like a demo, and it had been used as a B-side or an extra track on one of the singles, you know, down the line. But I just felt, again, it was, excuse me, it was just kind of buried and unfinished. So we recorded it with a new lineup, and Tommy, our vocalist, who's a great vocalist, so he was singing it, and he did a great job because Tommy sung on the whole album.
Right.
But there was something about this song that I just felt, I just felt that it needed, I don't know, it just came to me, I just felt like it needed female vocals, you know. So I asked the girls to come in and do it, you know, and it kind of worked. And the girls did a lot of the backing vocals on the album, but I just felt like that one song, Troubled Man, it just, even though it's sung from a male point of view, I just felt that it needed a female voice on it, you know, and it kind of worked.
So with most of these tracks, you've had to add quite a bit of extra. I mean, but the Rolling Stones had a few. Was it 4 tracks from Exile on Main Street that didn't go on the album, and they then sort of added bits decades later?
Oh, no, these are completely re-recorded. They're not. We haven't taken any original recordings and done anything to them. You know?
Right. So with Kiss the Girl, so that isn't Stuart's vocal on it then?
No, definitely not. No, there's nothing. No.
Oh, blimey.
No, there's no AI stuff on the album at all.
Ah, right. So this is all recorded with the Big Country Redux.
Yeah.
Right, I've got it. Geez, sorry, I'm playing catch up here. People. So you had the demos and then went, right, we'll re-record the whole lot in the studio.
Yeah.
Oh God, did you enjoy that process?
I loved it. I thought it was great. You know, really digging back into the sort of history. You know, and the guys loved it as well. Tommy and Stonesy are in a big country style band that do big country songs. They're called Restless Natives.
Yes,
and they actually go out and do maybe about between 6 and 10 shows a year, and they do big country songs, but they don't do just the hits. They pick a lot of the obscure stuff as well.
Yes, because there are. I mean, going back to that track I mentioned, "Kiss the Girl." I mean, it just has. I mean, I was just amazed it got buried away and didn't get sort of released because it's such a.
It was going to be a single at one point. It was actually going to be the first single from No Place Like Home, and then it changed again.
Right.
And then we never played it live or anything like that, and it kind of just got buried a wee bit, you know. So all the songs. I mean, I've had a few people come up to me and say, "Oh, you missed a trick there. Why don't you just go in and re-record your hits, like, you know, Fuels Your Fire?" And I think, I'm going, "Oh, what's the point in doing that? You know, you're never going to better it, and you know, what is the point?"
Yeah, because I think it was a guy from, I can't remember who it was, who said, "Oh, well, I'm going to re-record the classic album from, you know, like the 70s," and it's like, actually, it just wasn't as good as the one from the 70s.
But the only reason you do something like that is so you can actually own the recordings, and
you could do a Taylor Swift. Joni Mitchell once done it where she recorded her early stuff, but it was very different vibe. It was like it was really melancholic and.
Yeah, I suppose it's different if you're doing something like that, but if you're going to do a sound alike.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't have that kind of, and I think the spirit of those recordings when you're.
And you're only doing it just so you can own the recording, and then if a movie or an advert comes along and they want.
Yes.
Instead of spending a lot of money, you know, on licensing it from whoever, you know, you can do it yourself, and, you know, that was the thing here. I just wanted to go and find all these nuggets, you know, once that I had the idea in my head and I knew I could do it.
Yeah. So were you producing this as well, this album?
Yeah, I produced it, yeah.
God, that must have been fun. So with a track like
I've been doing a lot of production work. I've been doing production work for years, you know, and done a lot of stuff for the Skids, produced the last couple of Skids albums. And,
Yes, George.
I've been involved in production for a while. Some I've always loved anyway.
So with that track, the second track, God's Great Mistake, Part 1, was that another one that you...
Yeah, Part 1, yeah. That was another song that was just a demo that Stuart and I had done with a drum machine. And then we recorded a song called God's Great Mistake, which was similar lyrics but completely different music for an album. So this is the Part 1 version. That's why it's got Part 1 there, so it doesn't get other version.
Yes. And then Never Take Your Place, which is the fourth track. Was that one that can you remember when that demo sort of got created?
And again I found the demo, which was on one of the rarities, and again it was a standalone one song that usually when you do demos they're always in batches of 2s or 3s, but this was just a one-off, and again it had a drum machine on it, and and I can't, when you're doing all this sort of work, you try to do detective work as well and find out, well, where did we record it and who was on it and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And some of them are still a bit elusive, some of them, we're doing a bit of detective work. I can work out, we did that for that album and that one. And that one's kind of a wee bit vague, but I guess probably one of the earlier times that Mark was at the band again, because the drum machine, because Mark was always in and out of the band,
Yeah. And did you with these tapes, did you have, when you were listening back to them, was there little chats with members of the band and various conversations that you could listen to as well as you were sort of playing these back?
What, you mean on tape?
Yes. Well, sometimes I know when David Bowie, some of David Bowie's kind of early recordings, you can hear him chatting to his...
No, nothing like that at all. These were all probably sort of top and tail. There was no...
Right.
Right, let's do another take of that one then. There was none of that kind of stuff, It was
right.
1, 2, 3, 4 at the start, and then I probably... And the demos tend to fade at the end as opposed to finish, because if you've just written the song in the studio, you tend to go, how do we finish? How do we end this song? And you don't know, so you fade it.
You fade it, yes.
So you start playing it live, because you're not going to fade it live.
That's one way to come to an end. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. And just Pan-American Irish Girl. Can you remember much about this demo that you recorded?
To be honest with you, again, it was a sort of standalone one. I don't actually. There's some of them sort of stick out more than others. Again, like Never Take Your Place and Pan American are quite vague because they were only on one sort of tape, as it were. Like I said, they're usually in batches of 2s or 3s, and you can remember for what album and what session. And these two were just a little bit vague, I mean, I remember doing them and playing on them, but it's where were the detective work, trying to even going online and trying to get a bit of help, with a timeline. Mm-hmm. It's just a bit vague, that.
Yeah, well, many of those tracks that are coming out, were they many that you played live?
No, not at all.
So hardly, so the fans are going to be very delighted.
I've got a copy. Look, my bag. I've got a copy here. Hold on 1 second.
Yes.
Right, here we go. What's this? Nothing. No, the only one that would have been Winter Sky was the only one we played live, and we started playing that live much, much later.
Blimey, that's amazing.
Kiss the Girl, what about Peace Horses? No, I think we played The Hostage Speaks a couple of times.
Right.
But again, it was a different version.
Blimey. I mean, yes, banging on about...
We saw 2 songs that were maybe played live, so, but again, not much, not for long.
Were you, when you were doing that, the third album, were you at that stage, because the third album can be quite hard work, because, you obviously definitely haven't had a break. What was it like then, sort of, because there was a certain, I mean, I really liked the second album and the big sound, but obviously...
That album came easier than the second album, for some reason. But then again, I think it's maybe just due to experience. Third album, we changed from Steve to Robin Miller.
Yes. So what was it like? Because I did an interview with Robin. He's a delightful chap, and
He's brilliant.
He did Sade, and he's got an amazing sound. But he had that lovely. He did Everything But the Girl and various. He had that slight soul jazz vibe, didn't he, with a lot of his 80s stuff?
Yeah, but he's a rocker as well, you know. And I think he kind of felt, you know, it's like with Steve Lillywhite. Oh, we must get Steve Lillywhite because he can get that big drum sound, you know. I think there was a lot of that. And Robin, I think there was an interview or something that he'd said to somebody he wanted to get back into the more rootsier rock and roll kind of thing with an album, you know, a guitar album kind of thing. And we kind of ended up, and Steve just was happy for us. You know, I don't think Steve wants to be stuck with a band for too long, apart from the U2 thing, but he always likes to move on after one album or, you know, two albums in our case. And so we ended up with Robin, and it was great. It was kind of, you know, along the same way of working with Robin as we did with Steve, you know.
Because this was recorded over the winter of 85, sort of 86. How did you manage to get Kate Bush? Whose idea was Kate Bush to work on the title track?
It was kind of weird. We just finished recording the song this year, and did a quick rough mix before we moved on to the next track. And from memory, and it was a throwaway comment for Stuart. I think we were sitting in Robin's studio, the power plant up in Willesden in London, and sitting in the canteen, and I was just talking about, you know, the songs that we've been working on, and I think Stuart had just said, "Oh, it'd be great if we could get Kate Bush to sing on that." Kind of throwaway comment, and Robin went, "Oh, phone our manager." What, really? It was as simple as that. If you don't ask, you don't get. And Robin had called up our management team or label, I guess, or whatever, and sent she had sent a cassette across and agreed to do it. It was amazing, and she turned up on the date, you know, maybe a week or two later. Completely amazing.
Yes, I would have thought that would have been, you know, that was at the...
But it was a throwaway comment. That's whose idea. It was Stuart's idea, but it was a throwaway comment. You know, wouldn't it be great if we could get Kate Bush to
Yeah, God, well, no, it's, yes, I just, obviously, you know, I loved that very first album, or the first few albums, and then, you know, again, the 80s stuff gets, you know, is very memorable and everyone knows it, but, yeah, to get Kate...
Yeah, I think we'd been listening to The Dreaming at the time as well, which was a big album that we used to play, which, you know, and I think, you know, that the song that we did this year had something similar to the track, the Dreaming as well, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's probably why.
That's amazing. So look, as the 80s progressed, obviously then, you know, another chapter of music and another group of 16 to 18 year olds appear, and that can be quite tricky. Also, what I found was that suddenly ecstasy comes on the scene and the music kind of sounds start to change. A lot of bands kind of make that switch, like the Happy Mondays and, I don't know, the Stone Roses and, yeah, Primal Scream. And then dance music appears, and then a bit later you get grunge. What was it like being in a band that had been, you know, for most of the 80s working quite hard, and then thinking, God, we've now got the fourth album, but the kids are listening to something quite different. What's it like as an artist dealing with that kind of shift?
I don't think that we even thought about it. I mean, obviously we knew about it. I mean, I never really got into that ecstasy thing, as you're saying, that style of music. I just never got round to it. You know, I think we were busy out on the road quite a bit, and probably just never. I mean, I know probably a bit more about it in retrospect than what I did at the time. I think we were just wrapped up in doing our own thing.
Yes,
and with that, the Manchester thing. A lot of great stuff as well came out of that, but I just didn't get it at the time. You know, sometimes you don't get things at the time, or you get around to them later. And I kind of got into it a wee bit later because, like I say, we were busy. And the grunge, I do remember the grunge thing happening more because I think we were probably had more in keeping with that, you know, being sort of loud guitar band kind of thing. When the Nirvana thing kind of broke and it changed everything. And it was another revolution, really, wasn't it? It was like punk rock all over again.
Yes, it was. I mean, the 90s soundtrack was quite interesting. We had Britpop in this country, and then you had all those kind of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Soundgarden and Marilyn Manson. You know, when you were recording your albums in the 90s, did it feel like, my God, what are we doing for the next one then?
No, but I think we were kind of, part of our problem was we were kind of stuck in our own ways. We did our own thing anyway. We did an album called Buffalo Skinners, which was a little bit more mainstream and heavier, a bit more contemporary at the time. Whereas and it wasn't a contrived thing, it's just the way that we were, I guess, at the time. But it was a wee bit different sounding for the first three albums. Everybody goes on about the first, the main big country albums for people are usually the first three. Fair enough, but the Buffalo Skinners album, which was much, much later, I mean, obviously we had a lull in our career, as it were, with, No Place Like Home album and Peace in Our Time album. But I guess most bands go through that,
Yes.
But I mean, if you want to label it grunge, I mean, it's all. I just call everything rock and roll. If it's 4/4 and it's loud, it's rock and roll as far as I'm concerned. Brilliant. I mean, I loved all that stuff, but again, it's like, do you compete with it? Is that the right word? Or we just did what we did, and that's what we did.
Because you did Why the Long Face and Eclectic, didn't you?
Yeah, well, Eclectic was a different thing. Eclectic was, again, at the time, it was quite fashionable for bands to do either acoustic songs or, acoustic versions of songs or cover versions. And
yes,
Eclectic was this live thing that we did. In fact, that's where we started working on Winter Sky properly. It was on the Eclectic album, and we did this kind of Big Country Rolling Thunder review thing. We had people with us, guests. We had Steve Harley come up and play with us, and and we were doing with Bobby Valentino playing fiddle with us, and Carol Lawler coming out and doing vocals, and we were going out and doing things like the night they drove Old Dixie down and just cover versions.
Yes.
And that's what Eclectic was kind of about, and doing them they were acoustic based as well. So
did you enjoy that experience?
I did very much, but we were still doing our own songs. We were doing acoustic versions of our own songs, but we were doing a lot of covers as well. And it was more of a fun thing as well, and just something a little bit different. It was more small because I think a lot of our fans, they want the loud guitars and loud drums, and so we were downscaling a little bit as well. It was a different thing altogether. It was more for sort of small theatres and smaller clubs, that show anyway. It wouldn't have fitted in a big rock environment anyway.
Yes. So when you went into the studio to record that Driving to Damocles, did you
Driving to Damascus? Yeah.
Yes. How did that feel? What was the atmosphere like with the band at that stage?
It was pretty much the same. We were always, whenever we were in the studio, you take on certain roles, and it's always been the same as when you play live. So this time we were at Rockfield, but we'd spent a few periods at Rockfield, so we knew Rockfield quite well anyway. Aaron Kingsley that run the studio. We'd done albums here before and various other recordings, so that was great. It was great, and we had a great producer, engineer, Rafe McKenna, working with us. That was the first time I'd worked with Rafe, and I loved him. I thought he was brilliant. Great guy,
Yes, so, God, that was the August of 1999 you recorded that at Rockfields.
Right.
which I think was the last time there was a solar sun eclipse of the
I
sun,
wouldn't
actually.
know.
Was that a night? Did you enjoy getting away and being part of a unit, living and working together?
Yeah, but again, I've always done that because Big Country are, two of us were in Scotland, two in England, and then and later years Stuart moved to America. We were, no matter where to get together and work, we always had to move away kind of somewhere and, get a residential studio quite a lot of the time,
Yes.
So, yeah, and Rockfield is pretty much the only thing you can do there is work.
Yes, that's quite
And it's,
amazing.
but it's so laid back and, it's just, and that's why it was so successful. And it still is a residential studio, yeah, at Rockfield. I think why so much great music's came out of there. It's a great environment, and you just hunker down and work. That's what you do.
Yes. So how did you, I mean, in the O years after the great millennium, did you then sort of, what was your musical direction after that? Did you sort of work on other projects at that stage?
Well, I kind of I went back into Civvy Street and worked there for a while. The band had broken up, obviously, and then Stuart passed away. Um, I did a few musical things. I did with Fish, did an album and a tour with Fish. I've always worked with Fish throughout whether it just a guest thing on
Yes.
a song, but this one kind of co-wrote the album with Fish and Frank and did the tour. And then I got involved with Mike Peters, Glenn Matlock, Slim Jim, Kirk Brandon for the Dead Men Walking project.
Yeah.
So we did about I did three tours with Dead Men, which was like once a year for at the end, for maybe about 6 weeks a year, we'd go out and do these dates, and I loved it. It was great fun. And Jamie, my son, was starting to grow up a bit, and he'd always played guitar. So Jamie and I had this little acoustic thing that he and I would go out and do, and we did an album as well. But I kind of got away from it and tried to escape it for a while. But it's like that Godfather thing where it like keeps dragging you back in, kind of.
Yes.
And then the Skids thing came up, and Richard Jobson got in touch about putting the Skids back together to do this 30th anniversary sort of thing, and he's still going strong yet, which is great. So yeah, I've always, there's always been things. Even though Big Country's been my main thing, and just doing modern recordings and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of back. Like I say, I went back into Civvy Street, went back down the dockyard, and was working down there for a good few years. But still doing music at the same time, but more on a part-time basis thing with Jamie.
Yeah. And then.
But for the past sort of, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 years, I've been back out there doing it again.
Well, God. And then you've got this album, and then you've got some dates as well. You're playing live at the end of the year, aren't you?
Yeah.
So that's all good. And do you sort of, I know it sounds a bit corny, but does all that kind of experience of doing this new album and doing some dates, does it sort of feel a chance to sort of reflect and kind of have some sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it healing, but would you say it's quite a nice feeling to be able to re-engage with the material and feel?
No, it is. It's because I've been there since day one with Big Country. We weren't called Big Country at the time. I've been there since day one, and it's kind of in my DNA, and it's a labour of love. Although I shouldn't say that because people expect me to work for nothing. But it's a labour of love, and it's just something that I do, and it's just part of my DNA. I have to do it. So.
Yes. Are you still getting people come in who are sort of quite new, like young kids who are quite new, who sort of want to sort of read it?
Well, you do, but I think that's maybe because they maybe heard something that maybe maybe their dad or an uncle had played it or what's that, or something. I don't know. Accidentally find something on YouTube or something. But yeah, you do. You do get a mixture of, very, very young and old people as well. So
Yes, I could
it's
imagine.
great.
So with this tour at the moment, the tour coming up, will you be sort of playing the odd track from this new compilation or collection?
Well, because the tour is to celebrate the 40th anniversary this year, we'll probably do about 80% of this year. We'll still to work out what we're going to do yet, but it'll be mainly this year. A lot of stuff from the new album. And obviously, you've got to play the songs that you're known for, your Fields of Fire and A Big Country, Chance, and all those hits that were mainly on the first album, The Crossing. So no matter what we do, you always end up having to play about 60%, 70% of The Crossing anyway, because that's where all the sort of hits are.
Right. Yes.
And nowadays, there's curfews and stuff. You get 90 minutes on stage, and that's your lot. You can't go on the days of doing your 2.5 hours, 3 hours on stage, because nowadays you're allocated 90 minutes. You've got your special guests that are on for usually half an hour before your changeover. Then you've got 90 minutes because the venue's closed down at 11 o'clock. It's just the way it is now. Whereas in the old days, you could play till 1 o'clock in the morning. So you've got a period, a 90-minute period usually, where you've got to, what we're promoting and what else do we want to do. So you can't leave out those 4 or 5 songs that are hits, otherwise people ain't going to come and see you again.
Yes, you'll get lots of comments.
Yeah. So you've got to work out exactly how we're going to do this, and you can't please everybody. But
So with the
I think
material,
generally, as long as you please yourself, that's the main thing.
are there any particular songs that you play that you have to play which are particularly tricky to sort of
No.
get right, or are they quite straightforward?
No, they're all, well, from a guitar point of view, they're all straightforward. The guitar, I think with Big Country, the guitars sound complicated, but they're not. They're actually quite simple, but they sound complicated. But the hardest gig for instrumentation in Big Country is the rhythm. Is there for the bass and the drums is if you can't play the bass or the drums like what Mark and Tony did, then you're just going to be an average band. So you want to be.
So no pressure on the band.
And we're lucky to have Stonesy and Reese are playing with us just now because they can do it.
Yes, because I can remember sort of watching I guess it was New Year's Eve gigs that you used to sort of perform. And I mean, the fans that you had during that time, I mean, the atmosphere must have been phenomenal,
Brilliant. Yeah, usually we'd always end up playing at the Barlands in Glasgow at Hogmanay. We did the Playhouse in Edinburgh once as well at Hogmanay, which was great. But we've always said that the Barlands, it's like a spiritual home, as it were. Even though we're not a Glaswegian band, it's kind of a spiritual home. It's one of the best. It probably is the best gig in the world.
Yes.
Probably people in America that would maybe say, the Stone Pony in Asbury Park's the best gig in the world. And that's a great gig as well. But for us over here, the Badlands is.
How did the Americans take to the band? Did you?
Yeah, they loved it. We did a couple of tours out there in the early days for the Crossing, and they loved it. Yeah, it was just only that one album.
Yes,
Wonderland did okay across there as well, but after that, it kind of didn't happen. But yeah, they loved the Crossing. They got a lot of airplay and stuff like that.
So out of those studio albums, which one's your particular favourite? Was it? It sounds all like.
I wouldn't say favourite, but the Crossing is probably because it was my first time doing it, kind of thing,
Right.
So it's like naming your favourite child,
I just wondered if there was one particular one you can remember the atmosphere in the studio.
Oh no, I remember them all, and they've all got special places. But I think the Crossing, just because it was the first time, and I was young and bursting with ideas.
And it all clicked. It just was.
Yes, it did. It did. It
So
did.
actually, I can now remember I went to see the Skids at the waterfront in Norwich, and as you were mentioning that, I thought, yes, you were on guitar, weren't you, at that
Yeah,
stage? So you have been around
yeah,
playing for Richard as well. So yes, you've probably covered virtually every venue in Britain, haven't you?
possibly. No, I probably only scratched the surface. There's a lot more out there, There's probably,
Yes,
you know.
but every city, you probably played in every city and town in the UK.
I think so. Yeah, probably.
And what European country particularly took you to heart? Because mostly people say, "Oh, we were big in Germany," or "Italy loved us."
Well, yeah, Germany. We were never away from Germany at one point. Germany, Scandinavia. Uh, we went out to Kosovo once as well, which was interesting. But generally, we go down to Australia quite a bit. We do that once every 18 months.
Yes.
But usually it's Germany, Holland, Germany, Belgium, Scandinavia. We never did anything really in France or Italy or Spain. We just that they weren't. Don't know. They just it wasn't our market, man. You know what I mean? So been there before, but we just we couldn't put bums on seats there. Whereas Germany was more like America kind of thing than rock, But the Holland, Belgium, Scandinavia, we always done well there.
Business. I know Lemmy from Motorhead always mentioned Germany, keeping the band together or keeping them going
Yeah.
financially. It was the Germans. Anyway, look, thank you ever so much for this. This has been amazing. And yes, I've really loved listening to the new material that you've recorded.
No, thank you, Dave. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, it's been fascinating. And yes, it's nice to get some more insight into it. But anyway, look, thank you ever so much. I'll keep in touch with your PR person. But look, I hope the back feels a bit better. It's all
I don't.
Yes, I know. Anyway,
I'm sitting here all scrunched up in a ball at the moment, so once I stand up, you'll just hear me. I'll turn off the recording before you hear me screaming.
yes, I know this is true. Look, take care, and thanks again for your time.
No problem. Thank you so much. Cheers, buddy.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was me in conversation with Bruce Watson, talk about his life in music and also his latest project, Big Country Redux, with the album Eastworld coming out this autumn. This has been the C86 show. David Eastaugh. Have a great week. Stay safe.